This meeting of the Board of Education is now called to order. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome. We want to thank all of you for being here tonight. We'll get started with our agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda as presented?
Nothing for me, sir.
Is there a motion then, please, to approve?
Sure, Mr. President, I'd like to make the following motion: the Board of Education approve the agenda as printed.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll move forward with our agenda as planned and start, like we always do, with the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Randy. Our first part of this is the bond project update. County Edwards is here to present that for you.
First and foremost, good evening. I'll just move a little to the side so you can see a couple photos I want to flash on the screen. First, I want to start with a 2015 bond and just let you know that we're still coordinating our inspections related to the pole barns at the northern campus. We will be on site this week, work with the contractor to look at any punch list items. For our 2021 bond, on the screen, I want to share with you just a few photos of our gallery wall. We had approximately 175 parents, students, and community members who joined the principals and the design team to learn more about our design and as well as construction. The responses were overwhelmingly positive from everyone, and I'd just like to show you just a couple photos. Yes, it's on. Again. This here is a slide with one of our interior designers, and that's what they call a palette. Some of the samples that we're looking at for the schools. This one, I believe, is particularly Central Elementary School, but this was a huge hit among the kids of all people. I think this served as a good deterrent. While the parents were looking at the boards, the students were playing with a lot of the figures you see on that screen. So just want to share that particular photo. Here's another photo of, you can see the parents in line going around the gallery walk. The images 2D and 3D. Again, here's another image of many of the students playing with many of the fabrics and palettes. That gentleman, Mr. Heron, there is also engaged with the students as well. Here's just another look. Tom Stanek with a parent talking and looking at the campus overview. One of the most fascinating stories of this night, among many, was a couple who saw the existing Central Elementary come up, and they were excited to see the new project as it's underway. So that was pretty fascinating. And again, that was overwhelmingly positive feedback from students, parents, as well as family members. We also did a more intimate presentation for the staff at both schools, and we were able to show them the changes that we've incorporated in the designs from last spring up until today. We reviewed with them what we've heard, and then we showed them how their ideas and feedback have been incorporated into the designs. And again, the staff were also positive about the direction we're headed with the designs. Just a couple other areas. December 7th, we held our 7th design development meeting. In that meeting, we discussed the landscape architecture, overall floor plans, and we reviewed the main offices in both locations. Our next design development meeting is Monday, December 19th. Finally, we also had a bid for some easement work at Haverhill. There's an easement on the property that has to be relocated. We plan to bring a recommendation to the board next month. We also put out a bid for commissioning services. While that service is below the board threshold, we will also bring more information about commissioning to the board next month as well. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions from the board.
Well, Johnny, I ran into some folks that live near Haverhill whose children attended Haverhill years ago. And they were thrilled to be invited to this event because they still live in the neighborhood and were interested in what was going on. And they couldn't have been more pleased with the design and how helpful everyone was at the event with answering their questions. And the other thing they said is they're so glad that we decided to keep Haverhill in the neighborhood.
Oh, great.
So that was a good move to invite neighbors as well. Good.
Johnny, I'd just say it lowers my anxiety with the more input that is received. So I think you've done a really good job in opening it up and being inclusive and listening to lots of different opinions as the project moves on.
Yes, various opinions, and all of which we've tried to work with themes of what we heard consistently to try to prioritize those in the designs. So it's been great for us.
Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate that. The second item of the report is just some comments I'd like to make around some recent items of somewhat controversial, as viewed by some. As educators, it's important for us to recognize that sometimes our students have something to teach us. I've experienced that as I've met with my student advisory board, and that's certainly been the case this year with Portage Northern High School's Gay Sexuality Alliance, the GSA Student Club. Last spring, students in the club, along with their club advisors, initiated a grant writing project, which has since generated some attention and, unfortunately, much misinformation. So I want to take a few minutes as part of my report this evening to help set that record straight. Portage Public Schools, especially at the high schools, have any number of clubs and organizations that are considered extracurricular activities. These groups are approved by school administration and by policy are educational in nature. The goal of the GSA is to work towards creating a more accepting environment for all people, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. They do this through education, support, social action, and advocacy. Under that purpose, it seemed reasonable to them to apply for a competitive grant from an organization called It Gets Better Project. That project is to support their peers and to educate students and adults about some of the issues and challenges faced by their LGBTQ classmates. The letter awarding them $10,000 for their project to establish a transgender affirming closet at Portage Northern was as much of a surprise to them as it was to their advisors and school administration, even as discussions continued about the appropriateness of such a resource in a high school setting. As discussions about the intent and purpose of the grant continued into this fall, students, administrators, advisors, and others came together and concluded that a richer use of the time and resources would be to expand the use of the grant dollars to create a resource room where any student in any need could go to have access to any clothing, shoes, backpacks, and the like that they may need due to financial or other hardships. The students and advisors took this new vision to the It Gets Better project, that was the granting organization, and the granting organization agreed to the new scope. The project will go forward as a resource for students in need with the objective of being available in the fall of 2023. The following points are important for everyone to understand. This was a teachable moment. The students taught adults about their care and concern for their fellow students. The adults had the opportunity to share with students a lesson about following process, as well as community standards and compromise. Secondly, through respectful, thoughtful negotiations and compromise, students will be helping to provide everyday, basic and essential needs and items for students in need. Third point, parents of the students involved in the project were engaged in the level they desired to be engaged in. There was no secret agenda, and no effort to hide the project from anyone. As Portage Public Schools strive to fulfill our commitment to equity, which is to be an inclusive environment providing each individual access to resources and opportunities for success, I want to applaud our students for living those values and for their ingenuity, hard work, and ability to write and receive a grant in the amount of $10,000. It certainly shows their commitment to equity and inclusion and to make PPS a welcoming environment. I also applaud them for the maturity to understand that not everyone is at the same place in their journey of understanding equity and their flexibility and willingness to compromise to make this project accessible to all students. I also applaud our administrators, advisors, and staff who help facilitate the process in a way that guides our students in a respectful and affirming way. That's the end of my comments on that one. Hopefully, if you have any questions, board members, I'm happy to answer those for you.
Thank you, sir.
That's all for the report.
Thanks, Mark. We'll move to our next agenda item, which is Board Education Presentation of Monitoring Report 1.1, Elementary Student Success.
Thank you, and Dr. Jensenius is here to present that report.
Thank you. Good evening, Board Trustees and Superintendent Beeling. I'm here tonight to present Monitoring Report 1.1 to you for the elementary data. Okay, so this slide here should look very familiar. This is our second year of organizing by high school. Dr. Pasco presented that to you in October. In November, he had presented the middle school data. Now here in December, I'm going to present to you the elementary school data. The overview, we'll do an overview of the assessments for utilized in Monitoring Report 1.1, do some data highlights, and then some next steps that we've been working on. So with that, I'm going to look back just a little bit to remind everyone of where we've been, because it's really important, considering just kind of the flexibility that we've had through the past couple years. 2019 was our last spring testing cycle, pre-pandemic, with state accountability and comparable district data being reported. So that's a really important year to remember that. Spring of 2020 and the early stages of COVID, the state of Michigan did suspend all statewide testing, and we also suspended all of our internal screeners. So we are lacking some of that data there, as we all recall. There was no state accountability or expected results from any district in Michigan. So in 2021, the state expected us to assess students using the PSAT and SAT spring assessments at the middle and high school level. The state did inform us that there would be no participation accountability at that point on these assessments, meaning not all were expected to meet that 95% participation rate. So we've got some interesting data there. School report cards were then adjusted accordingly with that. And then in spring of 2022, we are right back to where we were at spring 2019 with state accountability, scores being reported, and school report cards. So you're going to see some comparison from 2019 to the 2022 data as we move forward. So with that, as a reminder, at elementary level, we use the Acadians for our literacy screener, young 5s through 5th grade. It does not have the comparable district data. FastBridge is the screener that we're using for math, young 5s through 5th grade. Again, no district comparable data there. But when we get into MSTEP, math, ELA, science, and social studies, we do have that comparable data. So that is able to take a look at that. And so as we start into this, we're going to start with Acadians. And we start to take a look at the Acadians trends here. And in this particular area, we're looking at 3rd grade only, and in that oral reading fluency. Okay? So as we know with Acadians, just a little background, it makes it easier for us to detect from kindergarten through 6th grade students who are at risk for early reading difficulties, for us to be able to provide that timely support and prevention. Third grade is a key year for us to take a look at what we want to know where our students are at in terms of their oral reading fluency. They start reading, right? We start getting some flow there. And know that oral reading fluency really is that measure of advanced phonics, word attack skills come in there, accurate and fluent reading of connected text, and reading comprehension. So kids start putting it all together. If we look at the pre-pandemic data there from the 18-19 end of year, we had 74% of third graders were meeting benchmark compared to the 2021, where we were at 71% meeting benchmark. And then when we look at the 21-22 year, we were at 60%, or 68%, sorry, meeting benchmark. So we do see a small decline there as we've been moving along this 5-year trend. But we want to just kind of point that out at this third grade piece here. And we can talk more about that and what we're doing there, the work behind that. So now becomes the most confusing graph of all time. Just so everybody's aware, this is one I have to practice on quite a bit. So this slide begins to show how cohorts of students, all right, the same group of students, when they were in 2nd grade through 4th grade perform. So as you go across this graph, you start to see this year's 7th graders, that class of 2028, this year's class of 2029, which are 6th graders, and then the class of 2030, 5th graders, so their graduating class. So you can start to see them go across there. So when they were in 2nd grade, where the 7th graders were, when they were in 3rd grade, where they were in 4th grade. And we use this data to start comparing that elementary data piece. So let me see if my fancy blocks, yes, come on. So when you look at this in particular, so those current 6th graders, the class of 2029, the current 6th graders, and those current 5th graders, let me just make sure I'm reading this right, getting it right. We had a drop due to the pandemic in the 6th grade and those 5th grade classes. You can start to see that in that cohort. So where it's outlined in red, the 4th grade, with the 6th graders, you see that cohort there, 70. And then you see the from 3rd to 4th grade there, you start to see that happening as well. So as you go across, we had a drop due to the pandemic from 6th and 5th grade classes, but you start to see the 5th graders, the class of 2030, start to bounce back. So looking up there, you see that they were at 72% in 3rd grade, and then they jumped up in 4th grade, that's 76%. So we are seeing that cohort start to move up a little bit. Now, what we're looking at, remember, is this is just the oral reading fluency, and this is one component of the overall composite score. So this is just one slice of the performance of Acadians that we start looking at for our kids. And so, again, we're looking at pandemic, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, and then we're going to start talking about our action steps and things that we're putting into place that are going to help support this work that we need to do for our kids. So it's a very confusing graph. It does help us to start seeing what's happening over time there. We're going to look at our next one, and we're going to now look at some M-STEP, and now we're going to look at 5th grade. So this is M-STEP ELA in 2022. And so this is where we have our comparator districts that we can start looking at. So the vertical axis represents the percent of students proficient, in which we see that 59% of all students, 5th grade students, tested in Portage Public Schools met the benchmark in ELA. So when you look at our comparator schools, or districts, that places us 4th among them. And in 2019, as a comparison, so we were going back to that 2019, we ranked 3rd at 67% proficient. So if you take a look at the graph across the horizontal axis, you'll see our comparator districts listed. And so the state is on the far right, so now you can start digging into it a little bit more. As you move along the horizontal axis from left to right, just like in the middle school and high school, the increasing percent of students that receive free and reduced lunch which is our measure of economically disadvantaged. So from left to right, you start to see a lower percentage or a greater percentage. So if you want to jot those down, I know Dr. Pasco gives these to you as well. But if we want to look at those percentages for our comparators, percent that are free and reduced. So Hudsonville at this grade level was 21%, free and reduced. Then Zeeland was at 27%. Portage is at 30%. Huron Valley was at 33%, Granville at 40%, Midland is 42%, Traverse City was 42%, and Grand Blanc was 46%. So you start to see what those percentages are. Now we take a look at, when we start looking at this group of our economically disadvantaged, again, same data. We had a total of 621 fifth graders take the assessment last spring, in which 185 or 30% were considered economically disadvantaged. In this graph, the vertical axis represents the percent of students proficient, in which we see that 38% of our economically disadvantaged students tested were proficient in ELA. And so we ranked 7th among our comparator communities. And in 2019, we ranked 6th with 38% proficient as well. So again, we're seeing that same data there in those years of 38%. So we're going to look at, right in the red rectangle, we went from, I think, a green diamond to a red rectangle to kind of highlight that. We're looking at our race and ethnicity scores for Portage Public Schools for 3 groups. So we have our white, our Black African American, and then our other than white. A reminder is that our Black and African American students are included in the other white category as well as when the state runs this information. So when there is a low number of students assessed in any particular grouping of students, data may not be publicly available. This leads us to having a smaller set of information, which is not appropriate to compare, and results would not be reliable. So you'll start seeing, like in Hudsonville, they don't have certain groups represented. There are Black African American students. They do not have groups available there because that number was too small to report. The state overall showed that 18% of Black African American students were proficient in ELA, and 27% were proficient in Portage Public Schools. In 2019, Portage Public Schools had 15% of our Black and African American students proficient. Okay, so that's the data there. Now we go into math, and we're going to talk a lot about math today. So when we start looking at math, moving into this, we see that 37% of Portage Public School 5th grade students were deemed proficient, which places us tied for 5th grade among our comparable communities. Bless you. In the spring of 2019, we ranked 4th at 53% proficient. When we start looking at this, now this is presenting of the data, but some of this I think it's important to remember. These students were our 3rd graders when the pandemic began. They lost all end of year 3rd grade skills and practice, and then that spotty instruction came about due to that combination of face-to-face, virtual, or quarantining. So we had a lot of things happening there in that 4th and 5th grade year. And what we know about math, very skill-based. So 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, we really are putting a lot more pieces together for them. We're learning how to multiply, divide, do fractions, multi-step problems. It takes a lot of teacher-based instruction, consistent instruction with mathematics. And so I think that's important to know. Something I was just reading the other day. So when we think about reading tends to be more influenced by parents and what happens at home, whereas math, we start to see it's more directly affected by what is taught at school. So think about your own children. You say, go read a book. Let's read a book together. Let's do this together. We see more of that. We probably have more of that happening at homes than we did necessarily, let's do some fractions today. So, you know, that tends to happen. So we're going to look at a little bit more. So our economically disadvantaged students on the M-STEP math show that 17% of our 185 students are proficient, which puts us in 8th place among our comparator communities. As we saw with the high school and middle school data, math performance has been negatively impacted the most over the pandemic. And in 2019, we ranked 5th with 26% proficient. And what we're really seeing here is nationwide is that students who had the least ground to lose lost the most. And while that pandemic affected all students, it did not affect them equally. We're just not seeing that equal distribution there of kids being affected. So our students who are economically disadvantaged got hit the hardest is what we're starting to see here. But we got lots of things in place. We're going to keep working. So when we start now looking at the state data, showed that 6% here of our Black African-American students were proficient. Portage Public Schools was at 7% of our 44 Black African-American students amongst the 8 elementary schools. In 2019, Portage Public Schools had 4% of our Black African-American students proficient. So this, again, is data that we are working on and we continue to focus in on, which takes me to the most important part. What are we doing? What are some action steps? And I'm going to spend a bit of time on this part. So as you can see, we're not where we need to be for our students. We are, however, diligently working on providing all teachers and students what they need to be successful as we move forward. I'm going to point out a few highlights from our continuous improvement plan at the elementary level. And so as we navigate this process, we're continually adjusting as the data is collected and analyzed so that we're responding to the real-time needs of our students. So just because we have a plan, we're not just going to go through that. We're really looking at where our kids are, analyzing the data, seeing where we need to make those tweaks and changes. So last year, we rolled out our priority standards, so really looking at what is the most important thing to really focus on. It doesn't mean we don't do all the other standards, but what are those priority standards and how are we making sure every single student has those under their belt? And this year, we are more focused on the full implementation and in-depth learning of each of those through the professional development opportunities during professional development days. So our teachers really need to know and understand what they're teaching in those standards. So we're providing pretty intense learning around those standards. And we are not done with this work. We are taking our time with it. We're really digging into it and making sure they have what they need to teach it. This past summer, our work around proficiency scales is the next step in that process. So a proficiency scale is tied tightly to a priority standard. And what it does, it informs a student and the teacher, but really the student, where they're at in their learning and what their next steps may be in order to continue on that learning journey. So think of a ladder, right? They're climbing up this ladder. Like, what do I need next to be successful here? As teachers are shifting their focus and trying new strategies and approaches focused on the priority standards, there is a level of support that's available through coaches. So we're layering in, our reading specialists are doing more coaching, our engagement specialists are doing more coaching. We're providing those instructional coaches to come in and say, how can we help support you in this work through the PD. So then the professional development teachers are receiving is provided by district level coaches, allowing that smooth transition back to being supported in the building to reinforce that learning. So there's the research around coaching, like professional development, you go, you get a PD, 5% of it is what people retain. You go and you layer it with coaching, 95% of it goes and it's able to stay within that building. So coaching is a really key component of making sure that our teachers have what they need to keep kids moving forward. So this level of support is key in teachers not feeling alone or isolated in their work. And that's especially for our newer teachers to the profession. We want to make sure they have what they need to stay tied into this work and keeping them here. We know this level of support mentoring is key, and we want to continue to do that. So another piece I want to add on is reflecting on the data in the current research. We see a path forward utilizing LETRS training. I don't know if you've heard about LETRS training, but LETRS stands for Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. So this is for teachers to provide a deeper understanding of literacy and language skills. Ultimately, the training will equip teachers with essential skills to master the fundamentals of reading. So when I talked about Acadians early, those early skills that we need to know how to teach, that's where this comes in. So the fundamental skills of reading, of writing, of language instruction required to apply and transform student learning. So far, we have over 130 teachers engaged in this work, primarily at the K-3 level, and that does include some of our teachers that are through the ESI. And currently, we are building the system utilizing the MDE grant to continue to add PPS teachers to the offered cohorts. So they keep offering cohorts, and we're able to continue to provide that training alongside that. This is very intensive training. I think it's over 160 hours worth of training that they're able to receive. And we'll talk more about this in January, the impact that it is having, that teachers are saying about the training. While it's intense, they are just really enjoying it. So, and this is really starting to build that strong foundation for our students in literacy. So this is a really important piece of our work. So as we've also reflected in research in the area of mathematics, now let's talk a little about math, we identified the need to better understand the formative assessment process. And so in order to do this, we've partnered with FAME, which stands for the Formative Assessment for Michigan Educators, again provided through MDE. We have started this process in math by identifying and training 3 facilitators per elementary building. And these facilitators are being supported by a district-level instructional coach, Jessica Winstanley, and then the FAME regional lead. This focus on the formative assessment process has been shown to improve student learning, increase student involvement, and help teachers be more reflective of student understandings and identifying barriers to learning. Through the use of the formative assessment process in math, teachers will be able to use the data to identify skills needed while also accelerating that learning. So a lot of that research coming out now around learning loss is really about how do we accelerate the learning. We don't go back. We say we need to formatively assess what's missing. Let's fill in those gaps and let's accelerate that learning. Because if we keep going back, we're going to keep seeing that gap go like this. So we have to accelerate the learning in order to keep it moving forward and close that gap. And that's how formative assessment is going to help us with that process and training. So another area that we'll be training teachers is through math recovery. It is an ongoing professional development opportunity that impacts the way educators think about student numeracy learning. Educators learn to design, implement, and analyze mathematics instruction based on individual student learning. Research-based diagnostic assessments, learning progressions, high-quality instructional tools help participants increase student understanding and achievement. And we currently have 24 K through 12 ESI educators participating in this training, and we look forward to adding an additional cohort of teachers in February. So as you can see, we're starting to layer in more and more of this training to support our students. And finally, I would say we're adding that position of the coordinator of school and mental health initiatives will allow us to, as was stated, build that system that provides connected and support for all, and will reduce that stigma and barriers to mental health treatment, and then create that community in which everyone can have their needs met. And we know that if our kids don't have their needs met there, then it's really hard to learn. So we need to make sure we have all that together, so our students feeling connected to their learning, and then we can have that learning happen. Myself, Dr. Pasco, Dr. Sheehan, Jessica Winstanley, Courtney Huff, we have been going out to each of our buildings and meeting with the building leadership teams to talk about their continuous improvement plans and actions. We're spending about 3 hours with each team each time we go out, and it's been a really great partnership, collaborating alongside those building teams, talking about the work that they're doing to have impact there with not only their students but all of Portage. So it's been a really powerful for all of us to do that, and we've started that, I think, right at Thanksgiving break, right around that time, and we'll be finishing up right before we leave for winter break. And we'll compile all that information, really take a look at the work that we're doing in each individual building, how it impacts the overall district continuous improvement plan, and make some adjustments. There's that real-time data, like what are our buildings saying they need with their student populations, how can we help best support that? So that has been, like I said, really good. So all this to say, we are continued on our focus on Tier 1 classroom instruction. We really want to provide our students with what they need to be successful by the time they graduate. That's our goal. We need to make sure that they have what they need by the time they graduate. And our job at elementary is to get those foundational skills sharpened, ready to go. We may have had a road bump there with that pandemic, but we're really focused on making sure we can move us forward. So I appreciate your time and listening in. I can answer any questions for you if you'd like.
I have a couple.
Yeah.
First, I want to thank you for the graph that you have that you indicated was very complicated.
Yeah, my favorite graph, yes.
Yes, but it's absolutely helpful because otherwise, when you look at the data, for example, third grade in 1 year and another year and another year, we're not talking about the same group of kids.
Correct.
Here, it's a different group of kids, so this helps to explain that. A question regarding the math part.
Yes.
I know that we have reading specialists. Is this the role that does the coaching?
So our reading specialists are turning more into like literacy coaching, and our engagement specialists are really coaching more around like student engagement, supporting that, making sure we're up and running. And then our FAME facilitators, while they're not in there coaching per se, but they're working kind of on the outside of it, like, what is formative assessment? Let's talk about it. And so Jessica Winstanley is going and meeting with those coaches and through their PLCs or specialized time, and they talk about those things, and then they go and they support one another. So we're looking at, we felt that that's what we could do now with every, an elementary teacher, they teach every single subject. So there's this balance of making sure we have the right things in place.
So we have a quasi.
Quasi.
Okay, all right. That helps to pull it together. So when we look at the data for the district, then it is my understanding that each building takes its own information. So now we're no longer looking at statistics, we're looking at actual students who are struggling.
Yes. Yes.
And they are getting that support that they need. Are there pullouts?
So when we look at that, it will just depend, right? So if we're seeing, especially in math right now, if we're seeing that, more than half of our class doesn't have a concept, that's no longer a pullout. We need to be in that classroom with that class seeing what is the missing piece, doing that quick accelerated reteach on that to give them the skill to move into the next level of learning. But if we do see some students that are going to need more individualized support, then we still have that ability to do that. Yes, we still have kids that do come out, but we like to push in too. We want to be pushing in, getting in there, supporting in that classroom.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a question, and I don't know if it's, did we do any research on the districts that shut down less than what we shut down?
I don't know that we pulled it to that level of shutdown versus, and it was hard to tell too. Like I would even say last year was interesting for us. We were in, but the number of times we shut down, our number of buildings, our classrooms went down. There was so much discrepancy happening even from building to building here. So yeah, it's.
I have a daughter-in-law that teaches Zeeland Public.
Okay.
Okay, so I know they were, teaches fourth grade, okay?
Yeah.
And that they were shut down less than we were over the 3 years. And their numbers are better than ours. And so I'm just curious if we have done any analysis of what the process across the state. You'd think the state would want to know that as far as a quantitative, how many days was this district shut versus this, and how many were they in person and not in person, and I know that's above all of our papers. It would be nice to know.
It would be
that data.
interesting to see that data. I'm sure somebody's doing that as their dissertation at some point, right?
Well, the other part of that is, though, even though we were open for elementary students, that doesn't mean all elementary students were attending in person. So you got that other factor that whole year, kids had the option of being kept home by their parents. And so that factors into all of it too.
Yeah, and we would quarantine a class.
Yes.
Or then we would quarantine 10 kids. Like it was very.
Or a building, or a,
building,
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of interesting data
And
happening.
subs and all that kind of thing too, with teachers out sick or with their own sick kids. So lots of inconsistencies that make it very, very difficult.
And now we're able to, at least what we can use with formative assessment, with these assessments and screeners, is start pinpointing those particular areas so that we can do the right work and move it forward for these kids.
So Kelly, great presentation. This is one of the 3 most important we get, so elementary and middle school and high school that we get each year. And then you know, you give us all of it, you give us the good, and you give us the sometimes not so good. And I'm just to compare, I was reflecting the rankings we saw here tonight versus some of the high school rankings we've seen, where we will still show up as like number 2 on the comparators list. And down here, we have more 6s, 7s, and 8s, which, you know, that causes the gut, you know, to tighten, and I can sense it. That's the impact on you. And I sense concern, I sense urgency. You know, and for me, it's especially when we see those lower scores with the economic disadvantaged kids and with the Black African American groups. And I know sometimes, I mean, those I know have jumped around because there are lower sample sizes, so they're more, they jump up a little bit more.
Sensitive.
Yeah, yeah. But when you see them down there, it causes a tightening of the gut. So you came tonight fully prepared.
I did, yes.
And, you know, with the plan, so, you know, you get our encouragement, our appreciation. I mean, it kind of sounds like this is the all hands on deck, and we gotta get back to the line that we were on.
And I think this work is what we started even, you know, a few years ago, like being able to say, what is the consistent work we need to do, this whole unpacking of the priority standards. And what we didn't do is just jump and grab at something. We're staying the process and really digging deeper instead of saying, uh-oh, like let's quickly respond to different things. We're really being consistent and knowing what is going to have a difference. It's going to take time to make that difference, but it's important.
And you showed us one piece of data that is good, which is a little bit of the bounce back we're starting in that cohort. So you're right here.
Well, I'm super proud of all our teachers and all the hard work they put in every day, because they're the ones making that difference, and they're the ones who are gonna, you know, make it happen for us, so.
Thank you.
Last, okay. You made a great point of how families and caregivers can help at home regarding reading and literacy. Are there some, like a math night for parents or something like that? Because math is not the same as it was.
It is a bit different.
And I'm a witness to that. So, I mean, are there like math nights for parents or caregivers or families just to at least help us feel more comfortable in trying to help? Because we could, you know, it's very easy to try to help, and you have the students say, that's not how we do it.
Right, yes, that's always a great one, right, as the parent, you're like, okay. I'm like, ask your dad. So I would say, yes, like, for example, Central L just had one, I think it was a week or so ago, they just had a family math night. So I know our buildings too are getting back into the routine of having those special nights and being able to connect with families and doing that work. But yeah, I think it was just, Central just had one, and I think 80 families show up, which is good, right? So we're really being really intentional about those nights too, and how do we make sure that we can get more and more families connected to that.
Awesome. Good work.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to our comments and communications section. Are there any citizens who wish to address the board this evening? We have two this evening, and we'll start by having our secretary read our guidelines for public comment for the very last time.
Okay, public comments at board meetings. The board welcomes community input at our board meetings and recognizes the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on district matters. To permit fair and orderly public expression, please conform to these guidelines when addressing the board. Attendees must register their intention to speak during the public participation portion of the meeting by completing the speaker registration form at the beginning of the meeting. Individuals may not register others to speak. Speakers will be recognized by the presiding officer and may not be called in the order in which they have started to speak. Speakers are requested to state their name, address, and group affiliation if applicable. Limit comments to 3 minutes. Direct all comments to the board and not to staff or other participants. Speakers may not yield any of their speaking time to others. Provide a written copy of your comments and supporting documentation to the board secretary if needed. Present your comments in a respectful and professional manner to model behavior expected of board students. Refrain from mentioning any student by name. Contact the superintendent directly regarding personnel matters. Board of Education meetings are held for the purpose of conducting the business of the school district and are not considered to be the community meetings. Board members are not obligated to respond to issues raised during public comment. Normally, such issues are referred to or followed up on by our administrators.
Thank you, Celeste. Our first speaker tonight is Emily, and I'm sorry, can you pronounce your
I'm
last
actually
name?
going to decline. My voice was already reflected in the superintendent's comment, so I'm happy to, I'll just decline so I'm not redundant.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. Our next speaker is Katie Schenk. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I am not, I appreciate, Mr. Beeling, that you shared a statement about the GSA gender-affirming closet. I feel that a portion of it was certainly spin, and those who read the FOIA and the application materials could certainly see that there's contempt for parents within the original plan for the project. But I'm not actually here to talk about that today. I'm here to talk about something that is related, however. On October 21st, an article was published on NLive where the district made an official statement through the communications director that content that can be considered pornographic does not exist in Portage school libraries. However, according to research done by a local program that researches age-inappropriate content in schools, PPS provides access to 319 books that have questionable content. The books are rated on a scale of 0 to 5, which rates violence, hate, profanity, drug and alcohol use, and sexual content. On this scale, a 4 includes explicit sexual nudity, including sexual organs in a state of arousal, obscene references to sexual activities, including anal, oral, and vaginal sex. A 5 is a book with explicit references to aberrant sexual activities, including rape, sex with animals, or a word I can't pronounce when I'm speaking in front of a group of people, abuse. Within Portage schools, there are 88 books accessible to children, which are rated a 4 or above. Some of these books are available through co-ops and other libraries. There are 23 books rated 4 or above that are physically present at Northern High School and Central High School and Middle School. These include books such as Push, which provides a first-person account of a 7-year-old girl who describes what it smells and tastes like to be forced to suck on her father's penis and lick her mother's vagina. And Sold, which is a story about a girl sold into sex trafficking and provides detailed descriptions of sexual encounters between children and adult men. This list only covers the cataloged libraries. There's currently no way to know what is in the uncatalogued libraries of classrooms. Why would the district say in an official statement to the media that you have no pornographic material found in your libraries when you have this? If there are no pornographic materials here, then your library catalogs are grossly out of order. Or, if your library catalog is accurate as it is required to be, then the public statement that there is no porn here is, in my opinion, an example of the district's communication to the public not seeming to match what is happening behind closed doors. You, as you are fully aware, are charged to oversee the free and appropriate education of Portage children. And as I wholeheartedly presume that none of you are groomers, I expect that you would want to have this addressed and rectified in a timely manner and keeping the public informed. So in my short time with you today, I do have a recommendation. Also, I have documentation, if you're interested in it, to support everything I've shared tonight. As a remedy, I recommend a solution that does not involve book banning. I recommend an opt-in system where books that have a 3 to 5 rating are not allowed in classroom libraries and are held behind the counter at school-wide libraries. Parents who want to have their children have access to instructions on how to rape their relatives, can inform the school in writing, they would like their children to have access to this material. And other children can be saved from encountering this destructive content offered to them by adults who are supposed to be keeping them safe while teaching them how to read, write, and do math. I understand that there's parental concern about the gender-affirming closet and a perception by some parents that that has been secretive or withheld from them. And I would say, given what has been found in this research regarding library content and the official statement that's been made by the district that none of it exists here, I do think that parents have a reason to be concerned. And the more of these things that come up, the more it's difficult for the public to have trust that there aren't things that are being intentionally hidden. So I understand this is a difficult topic to discuss, but I really do appreciate the opportunity to share it with you.
Katie, do you have a copy of your remarks?
I do, yes. And I also have an electronic spreadsheet that contains references to all of the books in question. I know I mentioned 300 and some books. Many of those are rated a 1, 2, a 3, or so parental advisory, but not necessarily inappropriate for kids, just something that maybe parents want to know that there's a difficult topic. But these 4 and 5 books, I mean, I refrained from reading direct quotes from them, but some of them are very violent. And so I don't have that electronically available with me today, but I certainly could email it to you if you'd be interested.
Well, if you could make sure all your materials get to our board secretary, Barb Atkinson, that would be great.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Happy to, yeah.
Okay, that's the end of our public comment for this evening. Are there any comments from board trustees?
I'd like to say that I enjoyed participating in the retreat earlier this evening. It really brings things into focus as to what we do as a board. And I just want to say that thank you for my ability to participate.
It's good to have you there, Celeste. Anyone else?
I'd like to thank Keith and Celeste, since this is their official last meeting, for being part of the board. And it's been a pleasure serving with you guys.
It's been an honor to serve.
Good.
And thank you to everybody for all the tutoring and camaraderie along the way.
I'll echo Kurt's comments, and Keith, you've been with us for just 2 years, but we've appreciated your expertise and your measured thought on things and just very good leadership. Thanks for that. Celeste, most of us have known you for quite a long time in a number of different venues, I guess I'll say. I've known you as a parent of a classmate of one of my children, a teacher, one of their principals, and I remember the day that you came to the informational meeting about running for the board, and all of us just snapped to attention like, oh my gosh, really? We were excited about that. So it's been a great pleasure to serve with you. You have brought a perspective to our board that nobody else has, and we needed that. And so thank you, and that's to you and all the other things that you're involved in, and keep in touch with us because we enjoy our time together.
Yeah, I would echo the last 8 years of incredible service to the community as a trustee, and before that, as a principal and as my kid's middle school principal. So appreciated. And Keith, you came in, we're up to speed so fast. You're so level-headed and thoughtful and community-minded. And it's been an honor, and I hope we still get to work with each other on Portage Education Foundation, another organization that does good things for the community. And then, Mark, in your opening comments, what struck me is your willingness to listen to students. And I really appreciate your personal efforts and the district's efforts to listen to, especially the high school students. These young adults have things to say, and I feel that we're listening to them, and we should, so much appreciation for that.
Thanks, Bo. And I'll just reiterate what everybody else has said. Enjoyed working with both of you on the board, and appreciate your service and all the contributions you made to the success of the board. And I want to let you know that, a little later in the agenda here, we have some honorary resolutions that will express our feelings in greater detail. Anything else from board trustees?
Portage Northern Collage, Friday night and Saturday afternoon. If you haven't gotten your ticket already, get one.
I'd just like to say that the Portage Central High School Band Collage last Wednesday night was just incredible. I just wanted to give a shout out to the performers, and certainly Brian Van Tol, Renee Flynn, and Allison Patrick. And the concert ended with Ibsod Walla conducting Sarajevo, the David Foster version, and it just brought the house down. So it's on YouTube if you get a chance to see it. It was incredible. I have a note here from Noni Knight that she asked me to read this evening. She says, my family and I want to thank the school board, the many dear proposal committee members, and the Portage community for their caring and persistence in renaming the Portage Central football field McCamley Knight Field. My beloved husband, Coach Knight, would be both humbled and honored. He would have been the first to acknowledge all the supporters it took to make Portage Central Mustangs synonymous with success. That would include all the assistant coaches and their wives, the hundreds of players and their parents and grandparents, the students who came out to cheer their team on to victory, the cheerleaders, the football booster club members, the band and band parents, the other sports coaches and assistants, the medical staff headed by Dr. William Cavanaugh and his wife Ginny for over 48 years, the men who held down the markers through all kinds of weather, the press box announcers and spotters, the sports news writers, the team bus drivers, the teaching staff, the 6 superintendents, 5 principals, 5 athletic directors and their secretaries, the lunchroom ladies who wore their team shirts on game day, the police officers and emergency medical teams, the custodians and field maintenance crew, the ticket takers, and yes, even the referees. This was the community that worked together so we could say, Portage Central, where only your best is good enough. A very heartfelt thank you from Noni Knight and 5 children and 5 grandchildren. So we appreciated receiving that. It was very nice. Also want to thank Tom Vance and Nick Miley for all the work they did on the 100th anniversary publication for the district. And now Nick, who graduated from Portage Central in 2022, has completed his work on the Centennial Anthology of Portage Public Schools, 1922 to 2022. And details will be forthcoming on how you can get a copy of that publication. So just a lot of thanks to Tom and Nick for all the work they did to highlight the history of the district. And finally, I just want to let everybody know that I've had multiple people tell me that they are so pleased that Mary Ann Joint is the new coordinator of mental health initiatives. She gets rave reviews for her work, and that'll certainly assist us with reaching our long-term goal of resilient children. So we're very pleased about that, and I've heard only good things. So I believe that's all I have. Thank you. We'll move to the consent agenda on page 34. Tonight we have 2 items, minutes from the November 21st, 2022 special and regular business meeting, and November 21, 2022 closed session minutes. And finally, to authorize an increase to the amount of the district's contribution to health savings accounts for all administrators to match the required amount of deductible increase as mandated from the Internal Revenue Service. Are there any exceptions to the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. And we'll move to an action item, which is Schools of Choice program on page 43. Is there a motion, please?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education approve participation in Section 105 Schools of Choice program effective with the 2023-24 school year and making necessary revisions to Operations Policy 5113, Schools of Choice Program as presented.
Thank you, Terry. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Celeste. Mark?
Yes, hopefully you had a chance to take a look at the background information and recall some of the previous conversations that we've had on this topic. Basically, the Schools of Choice program, there are two sections of the law that allow us to collect state aid for students attending from outside of the district. That's 105, which is being brought to you tonight, and that's for students who live in districts that are in KRESA, basically, the Kalamazoo County Service Agency, and 105C, which extends basically the same exact language, but applies to school districts and students who live outside of KRESA in some of the adjoining contiguous districts. So we've been a participant in 105C now for over 10 years, and I want to continue doing that, but also would like to participate in 105 beginning with the 23-24 school year. We do have a guiding policy on it, 5113, which right now is written only to recognize 105C, so that policy would need to be adjusted to accept 105 students if the board approves this. Like I said, we've had significant discussion on this as we've talked about enrollment trends, some of the transfer requests and pupil accounting requirements. A number of years ago, the district within Kalamazoo County had an agreement that we would not entertain 105 students. Conditions throughout the county have since changed. It's the Kalamazoo Promise is now in place, which has helped students who wish to remain in Kalamazoo schools. So most of the schools in Kalamazoo County now have gone to 105. We are one of the, I think, 2 or 3 remaining that do not participate in that. So in order to streamline our procedures and to be not put ourselves in a position where we might be accused of discriminating who comes in and who doesn't, is behind why we want to go to this. We do have, I listed some numbers here for you, that we have approximately 646 in ISD students now who participate through our release program. Those students would transition into the 105 program, so we would not be required to get an annual release, which in some cases has been very difficult for us to obtain because it takes time to do that. Parents are left hanging out there without the permission from their home district to release them to attend Portage schools, even though many of them have never been to another district, but find themselves, some have moved from Portage into another district, and therefore need to get a release from that district. So it's really a cumbersome process the way it is right now, and we want to streamline that. So the key difference between the way we're doing it now and 105 is that students, once they're accepted, will stay here until they graduate, and that is the same courtesy that's extended to students who are here under 105C. So we would be consistent with all of our programs. We've had internal discussion with our building level leaders, and everyone understands and approves of this move.
So Mark, practically it means we're a school of choice in Kalamazoo County.
Correct.
Okay. And if somebody wants to come, they don't have to get a release from whatever other district geographically they're in.
Correct.
And Mark, we still do have discretion to say no, or to turn the spigot down.
We have the right to determine how many openings we have in the district. We have the right to assign which schools those students can come into. So their acceptance is to Portage Public Schools. The building assignment is dependent on what the enrollment is in those buildings and where we have space. So we can annually make a decision to not participate at certain buildings or in certain programs. But as far as there are fewer reasons to deny attendance, and that's specified in the in law.
So Mark, if somebody, say, has been expelled from another district, how would that be flushed out?
Expelled students by law cannot attend public schools in the state of Michigan. So if they've been expelled and not reinstated through the processes that are outlined by law, then they cannot attend school here. So we still have the opportunity in limited circumstances to know and understand the background of disciplinary action that the students have had, and if they've been suspended or expelled, we do not have to accept those students within certain parameters. And again, I'd have to read the law exactly how that's written.
Yeah, it just seemed like this is really a non-controversial thing. And it's- At this point, maybe 15 years ago, it was controversial, but at this point, sorry, yeah.
Any other question for Mark? Okay, all those in favor of approving a Schools of Choice program, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes and the School of Choice program is approved. Our next action item is to approve 3 honorary resolutions on page 49. Is there a motion, please?
They're not going to.
Right. I hope this isn't going to die for lack of a motion, Randy.
Hold on.
I'll do the honors here. Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the resolutions in recognition and appreciation for Celeste Shelton Harris, Keith Crowell, and Rusty Rathburn as presented.
Second.
Thank you. So we have these resolutions prepared and they need to be read, and Terry is going to read for you, Celeste.
Resolution in recognition and appreciation of distinguished service by Dr. Celeste Shelton Harris. Whereas Dr. Celeste Shelton Harris began her career with Portage Public Schools on August 22nd, 1986, and served the district until her retirement on June 30, 2014, a total of 28 years of service. During her career with the district, Celeste served as a language arts and gifted and talented teacher at North Middle School, an assistant principal at Central High School and North Middle School, and principal of North Middle School. Whereas, as an employee, Celeste earned the respect of staff, administration, board members, parents, students, the community, and beyond because of her dedication, compassion, knowledge, conscientiousness, professionalism, high moral and ethical standards, care and passion as an educator and as a leader, and as such, she has enhanced the lives of thousands and the reputation of the district. Whereas Celeste's passion for serving the children, community, and district continued beyond retirement. On November 4th, 2014, Celeste was elected to the Portage Public Schools Board of Education and served on the board from January 2015 through December 2022 for a total of 8 years. Whereas during her board service, Celeste was elected to the office of Board Secretary in January 2015 and was re-elected to that office each year thereafter. She served in that capacity with the utmost fidelity, integrity, and professionalism. Celeste has attended more than 184 board meetings, served on the board's audit committee, policy committee, facilities committee, and volunteered to serve as a board member liaison on other groups, including the Curriculum and Instruction Council and District Values Team. Celeste has served graciously, tirelessly, with the utmost care and compassion, even through the most trying of times, including the COVID-19 pandemic. She also served during times of celebration for our district and community, including passage of the 2015 bond and passage of the $175,725,000 elementary schools and district-wide improvements bond proposal, in 2021. Whereas Celeste was awarded the Level 1 Certified Board Member Award from the Michigan Association of School Boards. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Portage Public Schools Board of Education acknowledges and extends its gratitude to Dr. Celeste Shelton Harris for her long her distinguished service and contributions to the district, staff, students, and community, and to the Board of Education. Be it further resolved that this resolution is saved in the permanent minutes of the Portage Public Schools Board of Education, and a copy is given to Dr. Celeste Shelton Harris. Adopted on this 12th day of December 2022, Portage Public Schools Board of Education, Randy Van Antwerp, President, Terry Novaria, Vice President, Celeste Shelton Harris, Secretary, Keith Kroll, Trustee, Kurt Droppers, Trustee, Bo Snyder, Trustee, and Mark Beelang, Superintendent.
Thank you, Terry. Congratulations. Our next resolution in recognition and appreciation of distinguished service will be read by Kurt Droppers for Keith Kroll.
Thank you. This resolution in recognition of appreciation of distinguished service for Keith Kroll. Whereas Keith Kroll was appointed to the School Board of Education January 4th, 2021 to fill a vacancy created by the death of trustee Joanne Wilson, and served on the board through December of 2022 for a total of nearly 2 years. Whereas during his board service, Keith has attended 40 board meetings, served on the board of Owners Lincoln Committee and the Audit Committee, and he continues to serve as a member of the Portage Education Foundation. Whereas a board member, he has served graciously, tirelessly, with the utmost care and compassion, even though the most trying of times include the COVID-19 pandemic. He's also served during times of celebration for our district and community, including the passage of the $175,725,000 elementary school and district-wide improvement bond proposal in August of 2021. Keith has provided invaluable insight, perspective, and guidance to the Board of Education. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Portage Public School Board of Education extends its gratitude to Keith Kroll for his dedication and his service to the district, staff, students, community, and to the Board of Education. Be it further resolved that this resolution is saved in the permanent minutes of the Portage Public School Board of Education, and a copy is given to Keith Kroll. Adopted on this day, the 12th of December, 2022, Portage Public Schools Board of Education. Randy Van Antwerp, President, Terry Novaria, Vice President, Dr. Celeste Shelton Harris, Secretary, Keith Kroll, Trustee, Kurt Droppers, Trustee, Bo Snyder, Trustee, and Mark Beelang, Superintendent.
Thank you, Keith. And our final resolution will be read by Bo Snyder.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. I'm pleased to read this. This is the resolution in recognition and appreciation of distinguished service by my friend, Rusty Rathburn. Whereas, Rusty Rathburn was elected to the Portage Public Schools Board of Education on May 6, 2008, and served on the board from July 2008 through November 21, 2022, for a total of almost 14 and a half years, and with 4 superintendents, Marshall Wells, Rick Perry, Rob Olson, and Mark Beelang. Whereas, during his board service, Rusty attended over 320 board meetings, served on the board's facilities committee as chair, as a legislative board liaison, and as a board liaison on the Portage Athletic Foundation, and lended an ear to the needs of the community. Whereas, Rusty has served graciously, tirelessly, with the utmost care and compassion, even through the most trying of times, including the COVID-19 pandemic. He also served during times of celebration for our district and community, including passage of the 2015 bond and passage of the $175,725,000 elementary schools and district-wide improvements bond proposal in August 2021. Whereas Rusty completed board member certification through the Michigan Association of School Boards. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Portage Public Schools Board of Education acknowledges and extends its gratitude to Rusty Rathburn for his distinguished service and contributions to the district, staff, students, and community, and to the Board of Education. Please be it further resolved that this resolution is saved in the permanent minutes of the Portage Public Schools Board of Education, and a copy is given to Rusty Rathburn, adopted this 12th day of December 2022, Portage Public Schools Board of Education, signed by the people at this time.
Thank you, Bo. Give a hand to Rusty. Thank you, Rusty, for your service. Are there any other discussion items, or is there any other discussion around this item? I don't think so. All those in favor of approving the honorary resolutions for Dr. Celeste Shelton Harris, Keith Cole, and Rusty Rathburn, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is passed and the honorary resolutions are approved. We'll now move to our next discussion item, which is board vacancy application review. As everyone knows, Rusty Rathburn resigned on November 22nd, and it's up to the Board of Education to fill that vacancy. Our actions are governed by our bylaw 0142.5 vacancies, and that bylaw requires that the vacancy be filled by the board using the following procedure. The board president, through public announcement in the news media, shall make known the vacancy has occurred, and those persons interested in being considered for the appointment should complete an application and deliver that by the deadline established by the board, normally 14 days, which we did follow, 14 days after the announcement of the vacancy. At this meeting, the full board or a committee approved by the board shall meet in public session to screen applications to determine which candidate should be considered for appointment. If there is a strong preferred candidate who emerges through the screening process, the full board may select that individual to appoint through its deliberation and vote. If a strongly preferred candidate does not emerge through its deliberation, the board shall select candidates to be interviewed in public session. So to start this off, I want to just thank everyone who applied for the position, who filled out the application. We received a total of 28, which I believe is the largest number we have ever received for a vacant position. So those names are all listed on the board in the back in alphabetical order. And we were going to start this process by each trustee indicating their preferred candidate out of 3 that they've each selected, and Michelle will be putting marks by those names. All 3. So I don't know who would like to start, but Michelle is ready.
I can start. I mean, I want to also say the people were unbelievable that applied for this. And I was appointed 8 years ago, and I wouldn't have made this cut, okay? Of these people that have all applied. Really, really good people. And it was hard to, we were tasked to bring it down to 3. So my 3 are Parker Crutchfield, Jennifer Phillips Rep, and Ian Hamilton.
Kirk, could you say those 3 stood out for you?
Well, I mean, they all,
One more time.
okay,
Third down.
I can't.
Jennifer
Hamilton.
on the left.
Hamilton on H. H, there you go. And then,
Your left. Left.
I'm trying to, I can't see who,
All the way to the left.
First column to the left.
Jennifer,
Right here.
all right. So, they all have advanced degrees in education. I mean, Jennifer was the provost at Western Michigan University. And so that's the number 2 position at the university. And Parker is at the medical school, and Ian's an attorney. And so all very professional people that all are, and there's probably 10 more that are very deserving in the group. But those were my 3 that I picked.
Thank you, Kirk.
Just go down the row?
Sure.
All right. So my 3 are also Jennifer Rep, followed by Tim Earl and Ian Hamilton. And really, I can echo the same things on Jennifer Rep that Kurt did. Ian Hamilton, I've gotten to know. She is one sharp lady. Along with her husband, has opened up a law firm on Oakland Drive, and it's very impressive. She's impressive, so I have her in there. And then Tim Earl has had a a very productive profile in this community, working on different community actions, and I think he would be a solid school board member as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Keith.
Okay, my three choices are Liang Zhang. She brings diversity as well as a perspective. She has terminal degree in neuroscience from U of M. She has been involved with Moore's Bridge. So she has a child currently in the school system. Dr. Ollie Barnes, he has been involved with the district as well. He has been involved as a coach with at Northern High School in swimming and diving. He has high standards, and I just admire him as an individual. And my third one is Ian Hamilton, who I've had an opportunity to meet. She has two little ones in the district, and I echo some of the comments that have already been given, and I think all three of them just stood out for me.
Are you going or I'm going?
We're going.
Okay. My choices are Lee Adams. Lee actually applied for a board seat at the time that Keith was appointed. And I recall Lee as being our second choice at that time. He is employed by the Upjohn Institute and has kids in the district. I guess I'll back up a little bit. I wanted to say that during the course of the time that I've been on the board, we've had some really great representation in terms of diversity of skills and competencies. Rusty Rathburn is a person that's pretty impossible to replace. He's a guy that grew up in this community, went to school here, graduated from Portage schools, is a small business owner, was deeply invested in the education and success of his own children, as well as lots of other kids that came alongside his kids. And he knows everybody in Portage. So he just had an extremely broad reach. So my point about the competencies is I'm impressed by people's educational achievements and their professional achievements. I'm also impressed by the people who are parents who have been deeply involved in school per se, but those things alone don't bring you to the point of being a good board member. It's a combination of a lot of things. One of the things that I value most is involvement in the community, your reach in the community, that you can talk to many people, that they know you, they recognize you, and you will listen to them. So board service was a top choice that swayed me among those other areas. So that being said, Lee works for Upjohn Institute, and he had some other excellent credentials. My second choice is Ian Hamilton. Man, she hits all the boxes. And I have gotten to know her too, and just think she brings all kinds of credibility, excellent credentials, broad community experience on boards and other organizations, and she also represents a diverse viewpoint that none of the rest of us have, and that's really important. And then my third choice is Ellen Winter. And I have known Ellen for many years. She's a retired educator, also has a unique perspective involved in special ed, which is something that we have not had represented. And then she has some unique personal stories that I won't get into, but that give her a view that, again, none of us have and many people don't have. So those are my choices.
Thanks, Terry.
Randy, I couldn't quite follow your instructions exactly. But I got close.
It's complicated.
So Sometimes I struggle getting to 3.
You can't count that high or what?
My number one choice would be Ian Hamilton, and, you know, she put herself out there as a candidate. And
Yes.
so I just got a lot of exposure to what she stands for. And so by virtue of that, I'd be extremely comfortable. Secondly, I had, number 2 would be Tim Earl. And I've gotten to know, you know, a little bit about Tim and just what he stands for. And then the third place, I had about half the roster in third place. Right, and I say that, and as you all are ticking some of these names off that just have one next to them, I just had them in this big group that is like, this person would be well qualified. And you know, Kurt, as to your comments, these are really
Really good candidates.
qualified people. I mean, lots of community experience, community board experience, you know, different city advisory groups and boards, and you know, public library service, and all these just, so I would just say, no, I do not have a third name. I mean, my third name would be pretty much all those that have tick marks next to them and 2 or 3 others added to it. So I admit I couldn't quite get there, but a lot of confidence in the top 2.
Very good, Bo, thank you. Yeah, my 3 candidates. The first is Cammie Freed, Camlyn Freed. She's a West Middle School parent and Amberley School parent. She has served on PTOs, PTSOs. She's involved with Girls on the Run, Cub Scouts. Just a real big supporter of Portage Public Schools, and works very hard, and would just be I think a really good board member. She's just a hard worker and an advocate for the district, and I just believe she would do a good job. I also landed on Parker Crutchfield. He's had a number of board and leadership positions. He works for the Stryker School of Medicine. He teaches ethics and leadership, and he said in his application that he embraces disagreement. So he knows how to work through that, and like Cammie Freed, the Crutchfields also have children in Portage Public Schools, which is important. And then my third is Ian Hamilton, and you know, she's a mom. She has 2 children at Portage Public Schools. One thing about her is she graduated from Okemos Public Schools, and Okemos Public Schools are a very good school district, so she knows what good education is. Certainly, she served on a number of local boards, and she brings us a diverse viewpoint that we need on our board. And she indicated in her application that she would bring a different perspective while remaining respectful to those who disagree with her. So I just think she'd make a very strong board member. She also received the 4th highest number of votes in the last election, almost 8,000 votes. And like someone said before, she put herself out there and did the work to get elected. So those are my reasons for those 3. So according to our bylaws, if there's a strongly preferred candidate who emerges from the screening process, we could select that candidate, or we could interview candidates. So we have a strongly preferred candidate, I believe. I think so. So I don't know that we need to go through an interview process to do this. Where's the board on this?
Comfortable moving ahead?
Procedurally, how do you do that?
We would need a motion to bring the appointment to action.
President Van Antwerp, I move that we bring the item to action, appointment to fill a vacancy of a trustee.
Thank you, Terry. Is there a second? Thanks, Celeste. All those in favor of moving this item to action, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Is there a motion to appoint Ian Hamilton to the vacancy?
Mr. President, I would like to make the motion that the Board of Portage Public Schools appoint Ian Hamilton to fill the vacancy spot, effective.
All right.
Like
Thank you,
immediately.
Celeste. Is
I
there?
second the
I'll second
motion.
that.
Yeah, all those in favor of appointing Ian Hamilton to the board, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Congratulations, Ian, you're on the board. With that, please remember to turn in your board self-assessments. And I just want, on behalf of the board, to thank all of our employees for all the great work you're doing for kids, and to wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Holidays. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here this evening.
I want to give you a paper cut.
I knew you'd look at me. I knew you'd look at me.